at 803 West Holland in the city of Alpine, Texas, for the purpose of considering the attached agenda. This notice is posted pursuant to the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.043, Texas Government Code. Public notice: the use of cellular phones are prohibited in the council chambers during meetings of the city council. Members of the audience, we provide an opportunity to address the council during public hearings and during action items. Please speak into the microphone located at the podium and state your name and address. If you have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject, please present it to the city secretary. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda. But if appropriate, the council may schedule the topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor may call a point of order to stop the personal attacks if an individual continues to personally attack an elected official or staff member in a meeting. They may be barred. Call this meeting to order. I will have the invocation by our former city council member, Nancy Anthony. Welcome back.
Let us pray. O Lord, our governor, bless the leaders of our city, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to our citizens. To our mayor, the city manager, and our council people, and to all in administrative authority, grant wisdom and grace in the exercise of their duties. Give them courage and foresight to provide for the needs of all our people. Grant them understanding and integrity, that human rights may be safeguarded and justice served in all that they do. Bless all those who work for the good of our city, in the offices, and those who labor for our various departments. And bless our citizens with a city where they can live in peace and safety. Amen.
Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you all very much. City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Mayor, we do have a quorum with an excused absence from Councilor Fitzgerald, and the notice was posted at 2 p.m. on April 12th, 2019.
Okay, we don't have any presentations or recognitions at this meeting. On the reports, I do have a report. I'd like to thank the students at Saul Ross and also the National Guard. They had a cleanup day in Alpine, and they pretty well were distributed throughout the city at the parks and also at the Resapa, correct?
14 different locations.
14 locations, and they did a fantastic job. Being an officer at the Legion, they went out there, and we were sorely in need of having our tables painted. They painted that, they painted outside walls, and also the bridge, who was painted whenever it was built years ago. So now you can drive by 7th, 8th Street and you can see a bright red. And so, fantastic job. They worked their hearts out there. Some of the girls had, I was telling them, says, looks like you have some red makeup, because they had paint all over their faces, their clothes and everything. So they did a fantastic job. Also the staff that was there with them, they went to work right away, asked me what we needed done, told them, here's the supplies, and they went for it. So, I'd like to thank them personally. And I did talk to Dr. Kevin about it also, thanking him for the great job. This is the second year they do this endeavor, and they're gonna continue another one in September, October, the fall cleanup. So they do a fantastic job. And I started out with 12 kids plus the National Guard. So within a couple of hours, I had like 25, 26 students at the Legion. And so I said, okay, 5 minutes, stroke the brush a little bit, and then swap it out with somebody else. Well, some of them jumped into the creek bed, and picked up all the trash that was in the creek, so great job. And then after that, city manager obtained some, some food, which was lasagna. And so we had lasagna, Cokes, water, and whatnot, so it was a great day. We were done by about 2:30, around there. So thank you very much. That's what the city does. As folks that live in the city, and they're part of the city. And so, again, I can't thank them enough. So let's move on. City manager report.
Mayor, I do not have a report, however, we do have some staff updates. The quarterly report by Park Supervisor Robert Yanez.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This quarter, we had two of our crew members help with the remodeling at the city office. Took about 2 months. Also repaired the chaining fence at the Little League field. Batting cages. Our next project was getting our city pool ready for the summer. Drained and cleaned the pool. Unclogged 2 drains in the restrooms and fixed the toilet in the women's restroom. The new toilet needed a new toilet wax screen and new bolts. Still need to replace the turbine on the roof and fix the water heater. David Martinez and Alonso Baeza did some of the construction at the water department. Brenda was also part of that crew. Working on remodels, we have cut some dead trees at the Covenant Park. Did some work at Centennial Park, weed eating and mowing. At Manual Paying Field, we added a new sprinkler system. Scraped the infield where the dirt was too high. Added some new bubblers at the trees at the dog park. Added 2 new sprinklers and International Field bubblers. American Legion Field had a park at the park. Added 2 more sprinklers at the International Field. I'm sorry, read the thin line. By getting all playing fields ready for the summer ball. Watering and mowing, pruning some trees at Covenant Park, leveled the Manual Paying Field. We also filled gopher holes at fields and Coconut Park. Used 8 yards of topsoil at Manual Paying and 12 yards topsoil at International. Have been watering all fields and parks on a regular basis and keep up with the regular duties and have some problems with the irrigation system at Baines Park. We have purchased a new timer for this problem, just need to install it, as now I'm a short 1 man due to an injury and surgery. Need to say big thanks to the street department for helping us weed eat and mow at the Coconut Park and all playing fields.
Any questions?
So Robert, you have some great work. I've seen your team out there, particularly when you're working some of the ball fields, because I know there's a lot of work to do out there. One of the feedbacks I've gotten is people are concerned, gee, is it possible to get the ball fields opened earlier in the season so when they get ready to play? How does that date get set and what do you work with?
Well, really, that's not on me. That's on the people here at the office.
Okay, so you're getting the work done, so the office does the coordination.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, great work, and your team's been doing a super job.
Thank you.
Great job,
Mayor,
thank you
if I
very
may,
much.
just before he
Yes,
steps
ma'am.
down, I just want to mention that Robert has been attending all of the Park Advisory Board meetings, in addition to coordinating with them on some of the needs that they have as a staff, as part of this park planning project as well. Also, at the last Parks Advisory Board meeting, we did talk about some of these rules, where they come from, how they originate, and to try to get some consistent structure on them. Operating hours, use of restrooms, which ball fields can be used for practice, which ones can't. We had another concern come up over the use of the concession stands, and Robert's guys have actually cleared out 1 concession stand, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
And
ma'am.
they'll be working on remodeling that to make that available. And also working on an interlocal agreement with Celross for some shared use of their property for additional practice fields to try to alleviate the congestion at Coconut with those ball fields also. So he's, in addition to the daily stuff, working with the Parks Group and trying to resolve some of these other situations, he's been very vital in that.
You need to commend it because a lot of you do it on your own time, attending these meetings, and And so we congratulate you for that. I mean,
Thank you.
I know, it's, you know, you do your 40 hours, a lot of work, and then come back again for meetings and stuff and help coordinate. So thank you all very much, and your staff that works with you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Good job.
Mayor, next we have the quarterly report from our code enforcement division by our code compliance officer, Scott Messina.
Mayor, council members,
Yes, sir.
residents. I'm Scott Messina, Code Enforcement Officer, Code Compliance Officer. What I've got here is totals for last quarter was 48 inspections. 22 of those were evaded voluntarily, 7 wound up being non-issues, and 19 are unresolved at the moment. We had 4 junk vehicles, 14 high weeds, 10 storage of discarded items, 8 illegal dumping, 7 construction with no permit. Any questions?
So, Scott, how do you handle the unresolved? So you had 19 unresolved. Those, what happens there?
I follow up, it starts off mildly, and then I follow up with more with a formal letter, potentially taking them into the municipal court.
Okay.
And some of these that are unresolved are pending. They're actually big projects, and they started work on them. If they start work on them, then I allow them to continue work until the job is done, even though it's longer than a 10-day period.
Do you have a sense out of those 19, you know, how many fall in that category? They're longer projects?
How many of those?
Ballpark.
Of the 19, I would say 9.
Okay.
And then some of them are also, some of the what are we talking about here?
Unresolved.
Yeah, some of the unresolved are people not able to get in touch with them. Returned letters not received.
And do some of those then create safety issues?
Yeah, they do.
What help do you need out of us?
And to get the city to abate and lien taxes.
Okay.
And those are your absentee owners, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so whatever we can do to, like Councilman said, to help you guys and take care of the situation.
Be great.
And I noticed that Saturday I was driving around my neighborhood, the mattresses are magically gone, like they magically appear also. So,
That's great.
Yeah. because some of them have been there for a while. And
That's, mattresses are the biggest, one of the biggest issues we have.
you know, and a lot of your furniture companies where these folks buy them at will actually pick up your old mattress at no charge.
Yeah. Maybe I should have a talk with Mitchell's and see how they work with people.
Yeah, and I put it in the paper on that issue also. So thank you very much, Scott. Any
Sure.
other questions?
Just the last question, are you able to take some of the safety issues to the Building and Standards Commission? Is that how you get them resolved rapidly?
Yeah.
Okay, good, okay, so we can go on together, thank you.
Yes, quite all. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Mayor, next we have the quarterly report from building services by the building official, Victor Maddox.
No, Mayor, Council.
Yes, sir.
Also to put on what Scott said, we're trying to approach the citizens with a little bit more friendly and less aggressive, you know, when they have an issue like grass or cars, you know, abandoned cars, that sort of thing. We go and knock on doors, and the door try to talk to them and try to, you know, make them, you know, take care of it by themselves without getting, you know, a letter, official letter, that sort of thing. So, and when they do it, we're sending a letter also, taking them, you know, they did that, you know, so they can see a little bit more friendly from us. Okay.
And, you know, and at first, you know, I was getting an earful of people complaining about you were too tough on them. But it never been enforced in the past. And I'm glad that people finally realizing, hey, we gotta clean up after ourselves. City's not gonna do it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, good job.
Well, for my quarterly report, we got permit totals. On January, we issued 49 permits, February we did 40, and on March 45. On the inspection performed, there was, on January, we did 40 inspections, February we did 49, March 52, there was 141 inspections for that quarter. Okay, you got on the report there all the itemized inspection if you want to go through them, or, anything, any questions. We got also the revenue by quarter. On quarter one from 2017 to 2018, there was 8,732. Second quarter, that was from January to March. On 2018, there was 6,281. On April, June, it was 10,524. And on July, September, 17,184. And on this year, first quarter was 23,660, 38. And on the second quarter, this one, it's 11,755. That's what we've been taking from permits. We also, on this month, we're gonna get the Trujillo project. We're already starting to get the permits. It's a $4 million project. Unfortunately, we don't have too much fees on that, so I'm trying to stretch whatever we can out of that with the fees that we have. Okay. Any questions?
So why don't you have enough fees to cover?
We don't have for the mechanical, we don't have any fees on the ordinances. For the permits for the mechanical, and permits and inspections. And they're, basically they're low.
Yep.
Okay, so whatever, for 15 cents per square foot.
Yep.
So for that project, it's probably gonna be, taking under consideration everything, no more than $8,000 for the permit, for a $4 million project. Because we don't have any grading, we don't have any, nothing like that, so that has to be charged.
So where are we on the fee schedule now?
I think we're looking at bringing it back in March.
March?
May.
Sorry.
Next year.
May.
Okay. Any questions?
As a whole, are the contractors abiding by the guidelines when they're building?
Yes, sir. I'm still having a couple trouble with 2 contractors, but they're getting the idea.
Okay, good.
So, but basically everybody else is trying to, they follow the rules, obey the, for the permits, So we're getting there.
Now, one quick question. Permits, are they supposed to be mounted or posted where the public can see it?
Yes, sir.
On the meter pole?
Oh, well, on the window or something visible, we tell them every time they go and get the permit to post it there, so everybody, when I go over there and do the inspections, I can sign it.
Okay.
We're issuing a building card also, so they can have all the signatures of the inspections there. They can have a backup and we can have a backup that everything happened. We're trying to get that settled.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mayor Finn, have you seen, and I know the answer because you and I talked about it, but I guess new and different contractors coming into the area?
There's the Trujillo is bringing their own contractors from out of town. There's some, I think there's an electrical that's coming, but not that much.
And the duplexes that are coming in on Orange?
Okay, those are, they're coming from Midland. Yeah, and they're hiring, I think they're trying to get some of the local electrical contractors, but the rest of them are coming from the, out of town. And those are the 2 major projects that got the city's going on right now.
And have you heard anything from the school district?
None. I heard that they're gonna do a parking lot over there at the elementary school, an entrance, well, not parking, not just an entrance and an exit. And that's it. I haven't received any plans or nothing to review.
So you're not involved in the bus barn that's fully erected?
No, sir.
That's $1 million.
Oh, the bus barn, yes, we did only the electrical, and we did some plumbing, but that's it. They haven't called for any inspection yet,
No structural work?
not yet.
The structure's up.
Yeah, well, they haven't called it in, and we need to go over there and look for it. So I mean, we're trying to get them to where they call when they finish or when they on progress, but, you know, they still don't get it. And we're trying to push it so they can educate them to when they have an inspection, they can call it in. There was a lot of roofing inspections that, you know, for some companies, they got a permit, but they never called for a final. And so we started talking to them and say, hey, you gotta get a final because you've got too many open permits. And if you don't finalize them, we're not gonna issue any more permits until you get everything squared out.
So they poured concrete, which requires an inspection?
No, that they did.
Okay, so.
That they did, yes, sir. Yeah, they did the slab. Yeah, they did the plumbing rough, you know, for the sewer, the drains, and I think it's one bathroom in there. And they did the concrete, you know, with the rebars, but they haven't called for any structure. Or electric, you know.
Thanks.
Anything else, any questions?
Thank you very much, sir. Great job. I'll take public hearings, we don't have any. And consent agenda, city manager.
Mayor, under consent agenda, we have approval of minutes from the city council meeting on April 2nd, 2019, approval of minutes from the special city council meeting on April 4th, and approval of minutes from the special city council meeting on April 18th.
Sir.
Mr. Mayor, I propose we approve the consent agenda with one, looks to be a clerical error, and that's item C, the approval of the minutes from the special city council meeting on April 8th.
April 8th instead of 18.
The 18th is the day after law.
Right, that's right. So it hasn't happened yet.
That's correct.
Okay. We've got the correction to April 8th of the typo. Okay, so a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion been made second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, let's go down to information or discussion items. And we're going to start with the quarterly report.
Mayor, we have a quarterly report from West Texas Ambulance by Mike Scudder.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I have two quarterly reports here. The first one is from the fourth quarter for 2018, from October 1st through December 31st. For the city, county, and American runs, we had a total of 158 calls. The total city calls were 88. Total city no transport calls were 42. Total county calls were 22. Total county no transport calls were 6. For the breakdown for October, 29 city calls, 15 no transport city calls, 10 county calls, and 2 county no transports for a total of 56 for October. November, we had 29 city calls, 14 city no transports, 6 county calls, and 3 county no transports for a total of 52 calls. For December, we had 30 city calls, 13 city no transports, 6 county calls, and 1 county no transport for a total of 50. And for our air ambulance transports from Big Bend Regional Medical Center to Alpine Municipal Airport, for October, we had 13. For November, we had 6. For December, we had 9, for a total of 28. And that was for the fourth quarter. Next up, I have the first quarter for 2019, January 1st through March 31st. We had a total of 120 calls, 66 city calls, 30 city no transports, 19 county calls, and 5 no transports in the county. And the breakdown for that, January, we had 20 city calls, 15 no transports, 7 county calls, and 1 county no transport, with a total of 43 for that month. For February, we had 26 city calls, 6 city no transports, 6 county calls, 2 county no transports, and for a total of 40 calls. And for March, we had 20 city calls, 9 city no transports, 6 county transports, and 2 county no transports, for a total of 37. For the ambulance transports from Big Bend Regional Medical Center to the Alpine Municipal Airport, for January, we had 25. For February, we had 7. And for March, we had 13, for a total of 45. And it seems like it's been a trend now that about two-thirds to half the calls now seem to be transports, and then the others are no transports. A lot of that, Good Samaritan calls for somebody and the person doesn't want to go, or we treated on scene and the person didn't want to go to the hospital, or they just, after we saw them, they just didn't want to go to the hospital. But it seems like it's a rising trend on people not going to the hospital.
Any reason why you think that might be like?
It's probably, I'm gonna say it's cost, because that's usually the first thing that people ask. You know, they say they don't wanna go to the hospital because of the cost, and of course, you know, if somebody really needs to go, we encourage them, you know, it's your life, you need to worry about that and not worry about later on, so. And then I made the annual report from last year for 2018. From January 1st, December 31st, we had a total of 605 calls. There were 353 city transports and 136 no transports, for a grand total of 489 calls for the city. For the county calls, we had 78 and 38 no transports in the county, for a total of 116 calls for the county. And you can see, unless you want me to read those all the way through, that most of the totals, it averages pretty much, you know, in the 50s and 40s for most of the months. One of the things that did decrease are our transports to the airport. The First Flight has their own ground transport ambulance that they take people in and out of the city, and they started taking our calls that we used to do from the hospital to the airport. And most of these that we have here, they were either when they were unavailable in Native Air, or Elite came in, or if their vehicle was out of service for maintenance and broken down, or they didn't have the staff, then they called us to do those. So we had a tremendous change in air transports. I think that was on the next page, where we were averaging 30 some odd transports all the way up until August, and then the transports dropped dramatically. In September, we only did 4, but we had 282 total transports from the hospital to the airport. Previously, the year before, we were doing about 350 to 400 of those transports to the airport.
So without getting into the details, clearly that has an impact from a business model standpoint.
Yes, it does,
Okay.
dramatically.
Yeah, how long is our contract with you all?
It renewed, we have a 3-year renewal coming up in October.
Okay.
It was a 6-year, where it was 3 years, and then 3-year option for renewal.
Okay.
And it does, unfortunately, it doesn't include the hospital. The hospital's kind of on their own, where they decide whether we do it or not. And they haven't, I've tried to reach out and sent proposals, but have really got no word back, continuing to do what we used to do for them.
Obviously, think about now, here we are in April, your contract is due up in October.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're trying to do the right things to reach out and help get something lined up that makes sense. So you're a viable entity, still managing costs, but at the same time watching your business base.
Right, right. Yeah, that's one of our, from the decrease from those billing standpoint, it has kind of taken a chunk out, and that's one of the things that we use to add new vehicles or new equipment, things like that, so we've had to dot our i's and cross our t's with those things, with that loss of revenue from those non-billing.
On these no transport calls, do you still bill them, or?
No, and the only time we'll bill on a no transport is if it's somebody that specifically called for themselves and they want some type of aid where we do something. But if it's something where it's a third party call, or somebody just needed advice, help, or we tried to we treated them there, then they don't get a bill. And normally, I know a lot of cities and counties there, because of the increase in no transports like that, a lot of them have instituted billing for these type of calls, but the downside is Medicare has, they have no reimbursement model or number to apply for that. It's automatically a denial. I mean, they have a number that you bill, and it's zero payment. It's not approved for any type. And a lot of these are where we get elderly people that have fallen, they call for help, we help them up, or if they cut themselves and we bandage them, they don't want to go to the hospital. There's no billing mechanism for Medicare, and they're already, these people are, most of them don't have a support system other than the Medicare for paying for that, so we just don't bill them for that. It's just an additional service to try to help them out.
Yeah, it's a little costly on those no pickup, especially if you go out in the county and whatnot.
Right,
You're talking
right,
about
and that's one of the things, is every time we roll, it's, there's fuel costs, wear and tear on the vehicles. I mean, the personnel are always available, so that's already factored in as an overhead, but it is, we get a call out 30 miles for a car wreck and the person doesn't want to go, we, use fuel, and there's no potential for reimbursement for that at all, so just factor that in and make it work.
Yeah, because half of the county calls, 49% to be exact, are no transport.
Right.
From the city standpoint, it's 38%.
Exactly, and the majority of those, they're further out, they're either at Double Diamond, out on the highway, 67 or 90, so those automatically, you've got wear and tear and fuel cost automatically associated with those, so it's not as much as responding in the city, we went 2 miles and turn around and go back. It's negligible, but the county calls they do, so.
Well, one of the things you might do is just think about when you come back to the city to renegotiate, is to talk about what are all the elements that go into that. And I presume you work with the Big Bend Regional Medical District to look at some of their costs as well.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, one of the things this year, when they hired the new executive director, they were able to go back and they funded another position for us that we got for this year. And that was one thing that at the beginning of the initial contract, they funded the first year, and then the second year they were having issues and we weren't funded. And luckily at that time, where we had by attrition, we had lost an employee that had just left voluntarily, and so we didn't lose that. We didn't have to let somebody go. And then this year, they actually approached us and said, we're gonna revisit this, and they actually gave us the funds to hire another employee, which we did. So we were able to hire another person to come on board right now. And we also have one of the upcoming things in October, something that's never happened in this area before. There's I can't remember the name of the company now, but it's a large education group, and they're putting on a hybrid paramedic class, which most of it's online, but then they're gonna have it in Fort Davis. That's where they actually pursued that, and we've got 3 people that are going to take that class to upgrade from EMT to paramedic. And we've talked to the hospital district, and they're interested in helping fund that program for us to pay the cost for their tuition. So that'll help us a lot. We can have majority of paramedics for our area.
Yep, good.
Great job, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And if I just add one more thing, if it's appropriate or not, I'd like to ask for prayers and well wish for my wife. She was also an EMT. She's worked for us and for the city for 18 years and been a volunteer firefighter for 20 years also. And she was just recently diagnosed yesterday with stage 4 squamous cancer. And we're going to Odessa tomorrow where she starts radiation treatment. And they're working on a plan to do something, but we need any prayers and thoughts that we can have.
You have, sir.
So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And council will permit me to have 1 minute of silence. Okay. We're gonna have a minute of silence for y'all to send me your prayers and thoughts to Mike's wife.
Tracy
Cancer is never a good thing, so. Thank you all very much. And Mike, tell Tracy that our thoughts and prayers are with her.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna leave. We've got to get ready for tomorrow.
Okay.
Normally I'd stay for the meeting, but I'll go. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, next we have discussed status of ground lease with Port Properties LLC and determine next steps, if any. In your packet is the copy of the ground lease. This is the property that the post office sits on. And you also have the email in there from David requesting consideration of selling that land to them. And I also included the page from our most recent audit that kind of projects out revenue on that ground lease. I believe in here he's made an offer for the land for that facility. May want to chime in here on what the next steps would be if council decides to move forward with this proposal.
Nick?
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble with the audio right now. We did review that document on the ground lease, and I suppose it's just a matter of council's decision on how to handle that.
Yeah, we had that land, that property appraised.
No, we have not had it appraised yet.
That's actually on phase 3. That's one of the projects on phase 3.
Okay.
Yeah, my sense is we ought to get the property appraised and then discuss this in executive session, because it's a competitive issue, back and forth, and talking about it in an open forum after we have the appraisal, I don't think would be appropriate, that we decide if we want to make an offer or not, and what the value that offer might be.
And we gotta have an appraisal on it first, if we can even think about it.
So if it's okay with council, I can reach out to him and let him know and see if he's willing to pay for the appraisal, or if he wants to wait until our appraisal's done.
So he can do that. And then we'll see what ours says, and then we'll compare the two.
Yeah, and the other is probably worthwhile to talk to the county assessment district to find out what they've got on the books for them. Because I think part of the discussion will go into, given that we were to sell it, what tax base would be from a city standpoint, given the property value. That's what all feeds in the equation.
Well, you may still not collect taxes on it because it's still being used as the post office.
Okay, well,
but yeah, we can find out.
But today it's city property. We probably won't collect it on the building, but it'd be good to get a ruling to say whether or not if the property ownership changes to a private property,
You get at least on the land.
if we get on the land. Yeah. Because otherwise, you got to question why would you sell it since you're not getting taxes on it, the city owns it. Sell it, you ought to get a rate out of it, that'd be part of our issue.
Any more discussion? Okay. We'll go ahead and we'll just table this.
Well, there's no action,
We'll
it's
bring
not
it up,
action.
yeah.
It's discussion.
It's just a discussion.
So I appreciate the direction. At least I know what to do.
Thank you. Okay, item C.
Yes, sir, there was a, so there's the article that was in the Alpine Avalanche that quoted some numbers about employee turnover rate that dropped from 43 to 18%. There was also an article that a citizen wrote about in the last week's Avalanche on this most recent one. And as a member of council, I would like to understand the basis for the 43% and the 18%.
Both of those numbers were not generated by me myself, and when I went back to try to re-engineer the numbers, I did not come out with the same numbers that they did. So in discussion, since that, I have talked to them, apparently there were some personal variances that were put into the numbers that differed than from what the standard is, which is taking the number of employees at the end of the quarter, dividing the number that have left by that. And so in talking to HR, there were some numbers, some personnel that she did not include in her numbers for it. And so her and I have talked about coming up with kind of a standard guideline as to this is how we're going to do this in the future, so that we get consistent numbers. The numbers from the 43% that were generated a year ago, I believe were based on total number of employees and total number of employees that had left. And Megan's here, and I think Megan helped Rossell with that. She may be able to give you more information on that. But that's not the same formula that was used by our HR coordinator for these numbers. So we're going to put some guidelines together and then kind of go back and look at it and see if we can get something consistent where we can say we're actually looking at apples and apples.
So was the 43% and the 18% over the same period of time?
So the 43% from last year was, and I think that was just carried over. The 18% was just on the 2 quarters of this year. So we'll have to go back and look at all of them and again, just make sure we can be able to re-engineer the numbers in reverse to make sure that they are consistent.
Okay. So as one who's led HR organizations, the Society for HR Management is the one that actually has to form the document how to convert it. I will tell you what the exact formula is. It is a very simple formula. And frankly, I'm amazed that we would use numbers out in the open press without understanding what those numbers are. Because it's very simple. It's the number left divided by the total number of employees. That is the turnover rate, which is different than the retention rate. The retention rate is the number who stayed divided by the total number of employees, and it takes into account, you certainly eliminate part-time employees because it tends to skew the numbers. But I would invite you to go take a look at that. It's easy to find. And then also, if you were to take the 18 and over a 6-month period, and annualize that, that would be 36%. So that would say far above what was stated as quoted as the 20%, which was the typical government percentage. So I would say the information that was published in the Avalanche was wrong. Would you agree with that?
Would I agree that it was wrong? Well, I think they were quoting me from a meeting, so I would say that it's wrong in the sense that I was not verifying all of the data that was put into the numbers.
So you didn't verify the numbers.
No.
Okay, so can we have a discussion at the next city council meeting to bring back what the appropriate numbers will be for the future? Because you know, we have only 6,000 citizens in this town. Not all of them read the Avalanche, but certainly they're looking for facts that are the right facts as opposed to what was printed in the Avalanche, which was clearly wrong.
So we'll have to do a correction once we get the numbers.
Yeah, and I would have thought that we would have had that by now, since today is today's the 16th. And that was on the 4th, so 2 weeks I would think would be long enough, but I'll let you go figure that out for the next meeting on the May agenda.
Jessica, I'm just curious, how many inquiries did you receive or did the city office receive from the Alpine community regarding the employee retention rate as very discussed in the news item? Did you receive calls from the city about that?
Not really. I got one email about it, and that was about it.
Just one email?
Yeah.
That was it?
You mean after the article was published? Yeah, it was just one.
I received a number of calls. People says, I don't get it. And it's very difficult as a city council member who represents the population to be able to respond when there's no basis for computation of numbers, and you just admitted you don't have a mechanism for sharing that.
And I got 0 calls.
That's okay, I know.
But, you know, depends on what side
Yep.
you're looking at.
So, yeah, so when the numbers were computed, I think the instruction to HR was double check with the people who put the one together so that you make sure you use the same numbers. And then trying to use that same formula, I couldn't recreate them. And so sitting down with her, she said, well, I didn't count this person and I didn't count this person, and then I added this person in. And I said, well, yeah, we're gonna have to come up with a strict, not strict, but more of an outline so that when those numbers are done again, that it's consistent.
Okay, so HR will sit with you then to go over the new formula.
We'll do a little policy memo internally and say this is how they need to be.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, let's move over to D.
So item D, looking for an update on the status of the plan for the remainder of the year relative to the planned actions to meet the goal of street resurfacing at 36 blocks for fiscal year 18 and 19. I know there's an item on the agenda under action items, but I want to make an assumption as part of this discussion. I don't care whether it's approved or not approved. What is the plan for the remainder of this fiscal year to get 36 blocks completed? Is there a plan? And is it written down, and can you share it with council?
Well, I don't have it written down with you. The plan is, if the items are approved, then we can get both the on-call engineer RFQ out right away so that they can start working on the streets as they're prioritized by the consultant who does the street study plan. In talking to Eddie, and he has reached out to see if he can bring back some of the previous seasonal, or previous employees as seasonal. Only one of them has offered to come back. He still feels that for him as a department to do that work, he would not be able to guarantee that he'd be able to finish any specific number based on how much progress they could make with the new employees. So what we have discussed and have looked at is, I think he's come up with a total of 56 blocks in the city that need attention. The priority of those, or the concentration of those, are on the west side of town. And then the smaller single blocks is what he will attempt to do with his employees, not just as this is the repaving plan, but also as a training opportunity for them to learn from the seasonal employee who does come back to do that. He has begun to look at material and cost, and they have been looking and identifying where the utilities are within those specific streets. So as far as the timeline goes, I think if the street study is approved tonight, we can probably have some preliminary numbers between 45 days which would be about the same time as we'd be able to get an RFQ before council to get another engineer set up to start working on those projects. And I'm, again, going to make the assumption that the 56 blocks that Eddie has identified are going to be also in the priority once that street study is done. So they should fall all in line. Will we actually get all of them done? That really is going to depend on what the estimated cost is and the utility replacement, how quickly the utilities will be able to replace the lines in those same areas.
So, I wish that the article in the Avalanche would, instead of saying Garza advocates for street study, would have said Garza advocates to repair streets. Because the street study is interesting, but I would offer that we don't have any material to do the streets. Have we put an RFP out for the asphalt material necessary to be able to rebuild those roads?
Well, if we do it ourselves, then we would have to do that, and we have not done that. If we go through a contractor to do the bulk of those streets, then the contractor would bring that material in themselves.
So the capital amount that we approved in the 2018-2019 budget was $380,000, correct? You quoted that in the last meeting, of which we spent 9%, which leaves $340,000 left. What's the average cost to repave a street in Alpine?
Cannot tell you that.
So wouldn't it be nice to go figure that out? Because based upon past experience, to repave a road is approximately $40,000. So that says if you do the 40,000 into roughly 34,000, the best we're going to get is 8 blocks done. That's the best. Okay, and if you look at the number of streets we have in Alpine, excluding Alpine Country Club Estates, we have roughly 900 blocks. According to the standard requirements, you would redo a road at least every 28 years, and you'd reseal a road every 7 years, which we did not do last year, and it'll be difficult to believe that we would do this year, because in order to be able to meet those criteria, we would have to be completely repaving 30 blocks a year. And at 30 blocks, and I just went through the budget, says at most we can do 10. So we are woefully behind, which says the city would have to order material to go do the rest. Now, I did a survey in Ward 5 yesterday on my own. Spent 2 hours, and while I certainly did not use the details associated with the TxDOT manual, although I did read it and allows for a scoring of 1 to 100, actually 0 to 100 on that road, 100 being the best, found that there are 11 blocks that are eroding completely, and 5 need completely resurfacing. I also did part of Ward 1 and took a look at that, and found that there are 9 eroding significantly and 4 need to be completely rebuilt. And so, you know, part of my frustration, when we put a budget together, I would have thought we would have put a plan together to lay it out, and we still have no plan. You're banking on a contractor to come in and do the evaluation. This will be the 3rd time that's been brought up for a vote, and it's going to be council's pleasure as to whether they approve it or not. But basically, your strategy is to subcontract that work out. I would also observe that the 2 people that have left, Hector, who was our streets department manager, and his brother left over a couple of years ago. What action's been done to go ahead and educate the replacement for Hector's brother, because he's been gone for 2 years? This is not a surprise that would have bubbled up in the last 16 months since you've been the city manager. And so we seem to be in this conundrum about, you know, paralysis of activity. I would also observe that we've been blessed thus far not to have a rainy season, but that's about to start in 3 months, about the time the study will be done, about the time we're going to be paving. And experience tells us we're not going to be paving too much, because unless you have less than 50%, you're not going to get good adherence to what goes on. We've missed the paving season. We have no plan. And that's the observation I have, because you just admitted we don't have a plan. So maybe the Avalanche can talk about, we don't have a plan to repave cities, because we don't. There is no plan.
You know,
So I would like to point out that, well, I appreciate Councilor Stevens' comments on that. We've had various discussions about putting a street plan together, about the previous streets being based off of a plan that was done in 2001 that had not been updated. The deterioration of your streets did not happen in the last 18 months.
Nope.
It's happened over a period of time. The
Well, we will
city
make
does
any
not-
progress prior to your
The
arrival.
city does not have a long-term strategy in addressing the repaving and reconstruction of streets. It does not have in place a strategy for utility line replacement and relocation, nor does it have a stormwater plan, which much of the city now is under a flood zone. And so there are various elements that are lacking to build a strong foundation moving forward with the capital improvement plan when you're talking $300,000 to $500,000 a year in repaving. And we've had numerous discussions about staffing in the street department. I believe that as of today, the street department is finally fully staffed. Their last employee came on board. Training has been a big issue. We have reached out to several agencies to assist in training. Did have discussions with the public utilities director before about training the guys on the equipment to get the feel for how the equipment operated and how it moved. However, even up until December, the public works director was the one and only one who was operating the maintainer at the time that he left when they did Country Club Estates. Eddie has been doing his best to train the rest of the guys. Paving takes at least 3 experienced equipment operators to operate. He says even if Joe Luis comes in, it's going to be very slow going. And he's planning on doing his best to take care of some of the smaller blocks and smaller areas on his own. And I think that it's very, while we have set the goal of 36 blocks, the goal is not set as part of a long-term strategy to address the streets. It's a goal. And when you look at the other factors and influences that come into that, there are a lot of things that are still lacking that take more than 18 months to put together a seasoned and qualified staff to operate the heavy equipment. You just don't get in and drive it. You have to really understand how that equipment works. And we have talked with Eddie about other alternative road materials to utilize on these small sections. And again, he comes back to, well, the problem is I only have one guy who knows how to operate this particular piece of equipment. So while I understand the frustration and I understand that people are expecting so many blocks of streets to be paved, there are still a lot of elements that are lacking to say that the city has a long-term plan in working with the utilities as well in creating their plans to be able to say we're set with a plan for the next 10 years when it comes to roads.
When will that plan be available?
That will depend on how quickly we award contracts for the appropriate consultants to come in on the infrastructure, the water and sewer lines mainly. Some of those manhole covers are not deep enough and the sewer lines are not deep enough, and you've got, we know we have old pipes in the ground. And to go in and lay new pavement or reconstruct a road on top of that creates an opportunity to damage those lines. And so line replacement is crucial to sustaining your water and your sewer system.
So the feedback I just ought to give to citizens is the roads are going to get worse for some time. Just to say in my ward, 11 of them are rotting overall, 4 of them on the edges, and 3 needed to completely rebuilt because they've already been built up. So that says the expectation, just in Ward 5, says we're going to have close to 20 blocks in Ward 5 that will be no better than putting down caliche and break it off. And that seems in my mind to be unsatisfactory, particularly since We together put these performance measures together for 2018-19, and I hear lots of excuses. I don't hear a plan. So, that's my point.
Part of the training, doesn't that go back to whoever the director is to make sure there's employees are trained in the use of the equipment? Because you can-
But you have to remember that I think for almost 6 months, there was only 3 people in the street department. The director, the manager, and one other person.
So we need to factor all these elements into it also. Because I know so many streets that got repaved a year and a half ago that they're just as bad now as they were back then, before.
And especially in Ward 5, there's certain areas that definitely need to have some additional work done, not just the repaving, but probably the installation of header curbs, because they are streets in which a lot of water carries off the mountain. And so just repaving is not going to give you your 20 to 30 years of life on that road unless you put in some kind of header curbs or some other stormwater remediations for them.
So I know it's
And
at
there are
Brown Street,
citizens doing that on the road right now because the
Yes, they
city
are.
has not.
Yes, they are.
because I noticed that on Brown Street, it wasn't even months after it was repaved. When it started raining, we had water accumulating on both sides of the bridge. It was a pretty dangerous situation, so it wasn't done right. I mean, the creek is right there, and all I had to do is put a little channel or something on there where the water would drain instead of stagnate, and cars going through there, you know, would have a tendency to probably have an accident. We're lucky we didn't have anybody have an accident there.
And the previous utility director did start out with the list, like, okay, if we can pave somehow this year, this is what we would do. We started off with his list and we've added, but even while he was here, he was not, he was not very secure in moving forward with paving on his own. Going back to his brother-in-law posed issues with nepotism, because they, I mean, not his brother-in-law, but his actual brother, and bringing his brother in. And now that neither one of them are employed, we kind of subcontract them as separate subcontractors. It's not an issue. However, only one of them is willing to come back right now as a contractor.
So if we need to get started on this, I guess one would be looking at, to do the streets right.
And I think if we had done this in January, the street study in January, we have something ready to go out for bid probably right now. And it would have gone. We've got Dan Williams that's working on the airport. Sunt is doing some work for TxDOT. I reached out to both of them. And they're like, well, given the appropriate amount of time, they could come in with their equipment and their capacity and being able to do these streets would be much greater than what ours would be. Our zipper does, I think it's 6-foot sections at a time. And they would come in with the 10 to 12 foot zipper.
And the cost for that will be about $2.5 million. So I just to give you some perspective, it's this balance between what's it cost versus what we can afford. Right now, we've allocated $1.1 million, and that is already 10%, 9% of our city budget. So if we're willing to take money away from others, we might be able to get there. The reality is, we have a budget, man.
Now, that
Well, and you have to remember that you do have a fund balance too, that council still needs to consider and how it wants to move forward with it. The money that rolled over from last year that wasn't used, so there is a little bit of additional cushion in that to do a bigger project.
Now, that 1.4 mil, I'll keep hearing it over and over. Now, does that include salary and wages and all this? So when you get through taking that away, how much money is really left?
Under CIP, we only budgeted about 380. And remember, last year we did that a little bit different. We budgeted 1.1 in the street department, and one of the line items was 380 for the streets. So,
So I'm going to push back on that. We have a streets department of $1.116 million. If we have another $600,000 of that allocated to something else, and we ought to put it somewhere other than the streets department. Because if we believe we only have $380,000, why we keep saying it's $1.1 million under streets department expenses? We ought to get rid of all the employees and say, go do something else.
That would be a decision council would have to make.
Well, right now it sounds like we're paying the streets department not to do too much.
Well, they do signs, they do potholes, they do other things besides just laying streets.
So where would the contractor start?
It's going to depend how we move forward tonight. If we don't move forward tonight, we'll probably do about 6 blocks this year.
And if we do move forward, how many blocks?
I would say they'd probably be able to hit maybe about 20.
Can't do it, can't afford it. We're $40,000 a block.
In Ward 2, there is some general discussion about the status of the streets. But needless to say, we ever share potholes and uneven streets here and there, and that of course could use some repair. But the few folks that I have had a chance to talk to, in the sense of long-term planning and the possibility of bringing on an engineer that will actually help to pave the way for us to have extended street service on a longer-term basis, seems appealing. And so I think we should consider looking at contracting for the long-term master plan or strategy to do something with our streets, not just for on a year basis or a 5-year basis, but a 25-year basis. And I think the way to go is, let's bring somebody in, give us advice on what to do.
Because a lot of these streets that were resurfaced or repaved, there was no account as far as a crown on it. So they were just like thrown there, flat, and water retains in those flat areas. So we need to consider looking at engineers so we can get this project going.
And you may not hit 36 blocks in the future with the plan, but the streets that go in, if the infrastructure is taken care of underneath, are going to last you a lot longer than 36 blocks. That's my personal.
So the max you get out of a road is 28 to 30 years. So divide 900, set aside Country Club Estates, which is a separate entity unto itself, separate set of issues. That says over a 30-year period, you have to do 30 blocks to rebuild every year. 30 blocks. Right, so you're going to rebuild, instead of just the numbers I'm very familiar with, having done lots of paving, it's going to cost you about $40,000 a block. So at $40,000 a block times 30, that's $1.2 million. That's just for an outside contractor. On top of that, if you talk about putting curbs in, all the things that we would like to go have, and then you talk about doing resurfacing or potholes or street signs or work orders or vehicle repair and maintenance or the acres maintained for drainage and the miles for drainage and the total training, you're talking about a $2.5 million budget. And so in a $13 million budget that we have for the city, we have to ask ourselves, what can we afford in reality? And so it'd be wonderful to go, spend $2.5 million a year on streets, but that's what it's going to take to be able to manage what we have in this town, unless we have a different strategy. Right now, we have no strategy. The strategy we've had is catch and go work it. We're hoping by now to be able to have the underground study done, which is not yet complete. And I would contend we have no plan. So here we are.
So you're no different than you were 3 years ago or 4 years ago?
At least, no, 3 or 4 years ago, actually, prior to the last city manager leaving, we were doing about 36 blocks a year and getting them updated and going work. Are we to the best? No. But I would contend that if we're going to allocate all the money that potentially someone's going to recommend something isn't gonna get done. And the fact is, we will not be able to pave all our roads. So that's part of the discussion we need to have with citizens. We're not gonna do all of our roads. Let's get that on the table. If we're gonna rely on an engineering company to come and says, based upon the study, multiple pages, 2 pages of the streets program, that's what it's gonna cost. So I just have to be a realist about how much money we got left versus, and what can we afford to get the job done. And we can't afford what we're gonna be asked to go do.
Okay, so out of the 900 streets you said we have,
Roughly 900 blocks.
okay, blocks rather, how many blocks were resurfaced or repaved?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not running the city manager is.
But these are the ones that were from a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Mayor, I don't know. If someone asked me, says, Rick, you ready for that? I would have brought that information, and I am not, wasn't asked. I'm just looking at going forward. We are where we are. We can't change the past. It's what's going forward.
Let's move forward and let's get this plan going.
And he's right, we can't change the past, like I said. The streets did not get bad over the last year and a half, they didn't get bad over the last 5 years.
No, they didn't.
This is a long-term thing, and without a long-term plan, you're gonna be in the same position every year trying to decide, okay, well, do we just Band-Aid it, or do we fix this for a 28 to 30-year lifespan?
Throwing money up in the wind.
Yes. Yeah, but I would just like to add that, you know, that as I mentioned, we do have our share of potholes, but the street crew comes in and covers them. They do a good job. And I'd like to make that known because they're doing good. I appreciate that.
And, you know, and working on communication between them and the utilities when they do utility work and having them come in and address it and not let it sit is another big part of that. Because of course, the longer it remains without being filled, the more damage is created to it. So it has been a process over the last 18 months in one, getting them to communicate with each other, following up, and then just double checking on each other, you know, in that process. But yes, they have been hard at work at doing the potholes. And like I said, they're looking at alternative material, alternative types of work to do to address critical areas. I would say, what is that, Cockrell and, I can't remember the cross street, where the water comes down.
That's the Hancock.
You know, that street particularly is extremely bad.
Yep.
And there are a handful of others that are maybe just a block long, a block and a half long. And the question then becomes, well, do you just do the whole 2 blocks? Because it's easier to bulk it out that way, or do you just cut out this parcel and do it that way? And, you know, there are other materials that could be used in those areas, especially where you've got a lot of rainfall that comes in often, that would extend the life a little bit longer. So without a long-term strategy, it is difficult, and you can't guarantee that that work is going to be there for 10 years, much less 5, if the utilities have to come in and uncover a manhole or uncover a valve or come in to lay in new taps.
It would be nice with Jessica in those areas where we know there are needs. He's pointed out the one on Hancock. I know it very well. It is now almost all dirt.
Yes.
Because the guys had to go in and dump caliche down. They graded it, they smashed it down. But right now, when the citizens in that part of the ward ask me, what's the plan? I say, don't have one. And wouldn't it be nice to go target those that are high priority, where we know the 11 eroding roads, the 3 that actually need, because they've already been ground up in one way or the other. Why can't we establish a priority? Let's look at those from a utility standpoint and say, we're not going to touch this for the next whatever until we work the utilities. But right now, there is no plan. And having a plan for the 900 blocks, in my mind, is what's important, because even if the proposal for KS Engineering to do a street evaluation, it does not respond to the question, what's underground and what are we doing? And we don't seem to know the answer to that.
So you already have an engineering firm that you've awarded a contract to for that.
That's why I asked, when will we have output on that?
So that one is in line.
Sorry? It's in what?
So they've been awarded their contract.
When do we expect that? This is a circular discussion, we have no plan. It would be nice for you to report back to council. Could you take the action for next week to come back and say, here's the broad schedule, here's when the utility studies will be done, here's when we expect to have indication of that so we can plan accordingly. Because right now, based upon what you said, we're not going to touch any of the roads that are eroding dramatically until we understand what's underground. And we don't know the answer to that. So I'll just tell the citizens, good luck. That's what you tell them to do. Is that too much to ask?
I think moving forward this evening, we can start getting the game plan
I hope.
and moving, looking at the same, part of it's gonna be with an engineer. Let's get the ball rolling. I know it's been before council, this is the third time it comes up. And it was voted down, so I think we need to tighten our belts up and let's get it rolling.
Next item?
Yes, sir, let's go to the next item.
So at the last city council meeting, we passed resolution 2019-04-02, directing the city manager to implement budget billing for both gas and water, allowing those that use gas and water services to sign up for that service within 1 week of the approval of the resolution, which was 2 weeks ago today. That should have started by the 9th of April, and to implement balanced billing not later than May 31st. And I've had a number of citizens who have come to me and says, gee, Rick, I went into City Hall. Your resolution said by the 9th of April, we'd be ready to at least sign up for that, even though it wouldn't be implemented until sometime in May. I'd like to get a status on where we stand, because they said signups are not allowed yet.
Right.
And why is that?
I did not get anything from Mick as far as the updated budget billing until, when was that, Mick? Yesterday?
We can't hear you, Mick.
Nope.
This week, I think it was yesterday, maybe, yeah, sometime like that, right.
So what did you need from the city attorney in order to start signups? There's no legal action required. It was simply allowing people to say, I'm interested in balanced your budget billing.
Well, I think if you just wanted them to sign up, we could have just taken signups. I understood you wanted them enrolled on the program.
That's not what it says.
Okay.
It says the service is to sign up for that service, and I quote the resolution. It says, and allowing those who use gas service to sign up for that service within 1 week of approval of the resolution, and to implement budget billing not later than May 31st, 2019. What part of that was not clear?
We didn't have an ordinance.
You don't need an ordinance. The resolution was to give action to you to allow people to sign up so that you could put the ordinance in place not later than the 31st of May.
Well, we got it from Mick yesterday. We've gone over budget billing, payment options, and the guidelines. You can hand those out if you want to. They can take a look at them. According to Melissa's records, we have 26 people that were on budget billing before for water and 81 on gas, including Fort Davis. And talking to Melissa again today, there have not been a whole lot of issues regarding budget billing. I think it's key to point out that in this option, there is a cap of $250. So you can only defer your balance up to $250, which will eliminate some of these that currently are carrying a balance of $600, $700, $1,000 on their utility bills. So that lays out the enrollment dates. It also puts them both together, and they will be in place by the end of May. So their June bill will be a budgeted bill.
So why is there a cap of 250? We've not talked about that. What's the rationale behind it?
Mick, you want to jump in on the cap?
Well, many cities have a cap because what happens is at the end of the year true-up, if there's a large credit balance there, it can increase the payments every month for a period of time for citizens. And it's just an election you have to try to keep the balance from getting too far into the debit side. Some cities use 300, some use 250. Some don't have any, but it's just to to keep everything more on an even basis, if you have a lot of citizens who have a high, negative balance, the true up at the end of the year is going to be difficult.
What's our data tell us was the highest true-up issue we had when we had balanced billing, since we've had it before, where we were in the range, and what gives us some sense that it should be 250 or 300 or 350 or lower?
So the cap of 250, so even at 250, if someone has a balance of 250 and their budget billing is terminated or they relocate, 250 does not even cover what they put down for a deposit. So the city then is already at a loss. So as far from the report that Melissa gave me, the highest unpaid balance, and I can't figure out what the last date was on this, was $1,158.
And that's for water or for gas?
That is for water.
And I'm familiar with that case specifically because I had that citizen one talk to me about that case. So that is certainly an anomaly related to errors.
The rest of them pretty much fall under that 250 cap.
Okay.
On the gas side, you've got someone that's got an outstanding, whoops, I can't tell from this. That is an unpaid balance of $1,940.77. Most of these within the gas fall between, let's see, you've got $1,940. The next one is $847, $632. And then you've got quite a few of them that fall between the $200 to $400 range from there. So the cap protects the city, and it also protects the resident, because if their budget billing amount, if it builds up beyond that $250, and their next year average is higher than what they can afford to pay because they're carrying that balance, they're going to default on budget billing anyways.
So, since this resolution, now that you understand it, will you be ready to give direction to the staff so that people can come in yet this week to sign up to express their interest on balance billing?
I don't see why not. In talking to Melissa today, if this was approved today, we were going to put the press release out tomorrow.
So the resolution's already been approved to have people sign up.
Actually, Mick has another resolution that he submitted to be approved.
Okay, but we approved this one as council. I don't understand why it's so hard to implement what council has approved by resolution.
Well, it could be my background working in cities, in that usually there is an actual document that lays out the guidelines and terms and conditions that council wants to follow, not just go do this and figure it out.
Well, this was go sign up and then we'll figure it out through the 31st of May.
Yeah, so in this case, we figured it out, now they can sign up.
Well, we've not passed that resolution and it's not on the agenda tonight, so we cannot.
Well,
talk
that's
about it
because we
tonight.
got it from Mick yesterday.
Okay, but that's, okay, which says we are never going to talk about it tonight on the agenda. Okay, so you'll go implement that, at least the first part. Thank you. That's all I have on that side.
Okay, let's go to F.
Okay, item number F, and that should have my name next to it. The question that's been raised and would ask the city manager to take a look at the no parking on between Holland and East Avenue E on the west side of Fifth Street to make sure we have proper indication there for no parking. I know there's a number of people that are parking there inappropriately. We either have to put up more signs or we have to paint the curb red, one of the two. But it's creating a safety hazard because people just park there, they try to run across the street, they hit the bakery, they hit whatever, and would ask that you go work there.
I think it's the same thing that we talked about.
It's the same law.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yep. Marie and I talked about it, she suggested since it's in North 5, that I'd raise it. Go ahead, Mayor.
Maybe we need to get APD also enforcing the no parking there.
I agree, that's responsible to the city manager.
You know, I think that the chief needs to enforce that, I mean, or just a patrolman just going by there. They're the ones that enforce by giving the tickets. Huh?
Is it not?
It's got no parking.
There's one sign that says no parking, that's it.
Yeah.
But it's not painted, right? So they're thinking if we
Yeah,
paint
so-
it.
Thank you, Earth.
Maybe we
But if
get,
this is Fifth Street, this is Fifth Street, correct?
That's
Would this
correct.
be TxDOT?
yeah, it's text dot.
Well, we had that issue when we were trying to close it for Art Walk. They kept telling us that that block was the city's, and others kept saying it was TxDOT.
Well, let's talk to Chris on it, because I know Fifth Street is considered a Texas highway. that
And
falls
Chris
under
did
TxDOT.
eventually do the paperwork to close.
Yeah, to close the street, like, yeah, let's talk to Chris then, and let's get it painted, no more signage or whatever it takes. Get
They still
that
park
issue.
on the painted.
Huh?
They still park.
Well,
on
that's,
the
but that's what I'm
painted.
saying, that's what, that's what we
Inside
have, that's what we have the city police force, to enforce that. Okay. Okay, let's move on, is that it on this?
Well, I got that one.
Let's go on to the action items to be accompanied by a brief statement of facts, including where funds are coming from, if applicable. Action items limited to 10 per meeting. Citizens are allowed to comment, limited to 3 minutes after being called upon by the mayor. Citizens are required to state their name and the ward in which they reside. Priority will be given to citizens of Alpine and those who own business or property in the city. Individuals who do not live in or own business or property in the city limits of Alpine will be allowed to speak if there's time available. City manager.
Mayor, item 1 is discuss, consider, and take action to approve the easement and right-of-way agreement with AEP Texas Incorporated. In your packet is the easement and right-of-way that they have provided for us. This is the land outside our landfill, and this is so they can complete the installation of their new transmission pole.
And we got some AEP folks here.
Can I get a
Two of us here in case anybody has questions.
Can we get a motion?
Yeah.
So I move we approve the easement and right-of-way agreement with AEP as specified in our package.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, now the discussion, sir. It's all yours.
Anybody had any questions about it? All we're doing is rebuilding the line. Moving from one side of the road to the other so that we're not going over the propane tanks that are out there and,
Okay.
yeah, and rebuilding the line out there so that it's a safe line.
So are you going to be using steel or are you using wood?
We're using wood poles.
Using the poles.
Yeah, wood poles. And part of the reason we're doing it is because the power between Alpine and Marathon has had some issues in the
That's
past.
the weakest link.
Yeah, and so we're replacing that entire line, moving it out to Highway 90. And instead of coming from where that line is now, out deep in the property, we're gonna be going from the highway back to the dump.
So is your sense, even though it's wood, it will be able to survive the ice
It'll
storms
survive,
going through here?
it'll survive longer than the dump will survive.
Sorry?
The poles will survive longer than the dump will. The dump will be empty before, filled and done before those poles are out.
Okay, that's the next 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I just worried about wood and I,
Oh, yeah. The poles that AEP uses are,
Hey, Billy? Yes. Would you like to tell him about the poles that we use?
Poles, they're penetrated poles,
Yeah.
and they got a lifespan of about 30 years right now. If lightning or something doesn't hit them.
yeah,
okay, they can handle the wind and the ice.
absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Good to see you.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, any more discussion? See none, all those in favor? Raise your right hand, opposed, like sign, motion carries.
All right.
Go
Thank
to
you.
it.
All righty.
Thank you. Item 2,
Mayor, the next item is discuss, consider, and take action to approve the agreement with the Family Crisis Center of Big Bend Incorporated, a nonprofit organization and providing funding for victim assistance services.
okay. Yes, sir.
I move that we take action or approve the agreement with the Family Crisis Center of the Big Bend Incorporation nonprofit organization and providing for funding the providing victim assistance services.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion's made and second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
So this, so I support what's being recommended. My only concern is, this is an agreement that goes out to 2023, which is beyond the authority of this council to appropriate dollars. So my concern is that the